Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's January 12th, 2022, 4 p.m. First, Happy New Year to everyone. Um, Hopefully, you got a nice time to spend with your families, and we're 12 days in, so we're right back at it. Thank you for spending this time with us for today's discussion, which is differentiation in WBL Part 2. Um, this workshop is going to focus, this presentation is going to focus on the students. Our presenters for today is myself, Larry Williams, Desmond Jardine, Joe Pinto, and Takia Weeks. And just to go over some of the meeting norms for this afternoon, uh, we all participate to make this session most useful for everyone. We commit to being present during the session and during the breakouts. We encourage you to speak up live and or engage in chat, and we will complete the exit survey before you leave. And actually, I'm going to ask if Takia, at some point after I'm finished my piece, if we could just drop the exit survey into the chat so that everyone can have it. But just to go over the beginning, as we started the discussion before the presentation actually began, we'd love to hear from everyone. So please, when it's time, just please unmute yourselves and please chime in. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Kia Weeks.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Good afternoon. I hope you guys are all well. We wanted to start the year off strong, and there's some reminders in here around specific milestones that we are trying to nudge schools to be able to meet. You guys already know that CTE is trying to make sure that all students have access to work-based learning that will allow them to acquire 54 hours by the time they graduate. And so we started off with hoping to have juniors and seniors enrolled in CTS with profiles. And then the next piece is making sure that the hours are being tracked, and that, at this point, seniors who have had exposure over the last 4 years have already made it to the 54 hours. So, we've been given a little bit of an extension. That date was originally the 10th of January. That's being extended to January 30th, so that we also have time to be able to move to using the WBL HR code on the transcript as a way to signify that students have made it to that milestone. So we're really hopeful that, you guys are not only busy with, providing the quality work-based learning that you do, but also making sure that you are documenting it, especially for those who are getting ready to graduate in June. So, wanted to just bring that back as a reminder, and kind of focus us all on, where this is getting us to, so that students can say that they have the CTE endorsed diploma and that they got the engagement and exposure that will help them to succeed in their pathway. So moving to the next slide, the guiding question for today's session is, how can I get the right students matched to my work-based learning opportunities? We know that there are a plethora of opportunities out there, some of which are being created right in-house in your schools. Others are being pulled from, the CTE central team, outside partners, et cetera. So we know that opportunities exist, maybe it's not as many as we would have wanted at this time due to COVID, but we want to make sure that we are also looking at our student populations and making the right choices when it comes to which students should be experiencing what opportunities. We know that, your students are so unique. They're all in different places in their lives. They're all in different places in their preparation journey. And so not every opportunity is going to be right for every student, especially at the grade level they are, as well as, their level of preparedness, as I said. So we want to spend time today really thinking about ways that you can create that structure that will help you in the matching process. So moving to the next slide, we're going to play this out so that you can kind of get a sense of maybe what some things in place could look like as you start to match students when a work-based learning opportunity comes out. So just bear with us. This is the scenario. You just heard about an opportunity, whether it be through CTE or some outside source. And so now, your ears are perked up. You're trying to figure out what's my next step. So when we move to the next slide, we start to think about the questions that can guide you in the process to think about the students that could be considered for that particular new opportunity. So some of those questions are, what prior skills and experiences will a student need to draw on to do this well? Thinking about that opportunity, thinking about whether there's an employer partner involved or a host site, you want to make the best impression. You also want to make sure that the student is able to do what it is they're being asked to do. So what kinds of skills and experiences will that student need? So that's one of the first things to keep in mind. The second would be how independent, mature, or self-managing will a student be expected to be? So not only what kinds of skills do they have, but do they need constant kind of reminders? Do they need hand holding? Are they able to really kind of take it and run with it? Can they get there on time on their own? Do they need to have any additional supports on the homestead? Those are things to think about too when you're looking at the pool of students. The next piece is, what stage of work-based learning does this correspond to, and what students are at that stage? So, there's some opportunities that are better for seniors or better for students who have already had an internship. There are others that are more exposure-based that might be more beneficial for your younger students who are just now getting a sense of what the pathway is and where they stand in terms of their skill sets and their interest levels. So you want to also think about where your students are on the gamut, and making sure that you're not putting a student in a place where either it's above their head or it's something that may not hold their interest because they've already done something similar previously. And then you have, who needs the hours this activity provides? We know that the 54 hours is the minimum that we'd want our students to be able to hit. And there's some students that have already surpassed that, whether it's because of ISP or SYEP. And then there are others who really, really have not had exposure and have missed out and have not had the ability to acquire hours. So do you want to pick from the students that maybe need to get additional hours under their belt? Or do you want to expose students who already have some expertise because that would speak to their level of maturity? And then, are you reaching all your students? We know that your student body is filled with so many different groups, inclusive of those in special populations. So students who are IEP students, students who are English language learners, those who may need to have a little bit more support when it comes to the emotional side of things. There are students who are really, really kind of poised to be stars and have all of the different skill sets that you would want them to have. So are you getting an opportunity to meet and match all of those students, and not just kind of coming back to the same group every time? And then finally, is there a student for whom this could pose a new and important challenge? We know there are kids that just need that right opportunity to really showcase what they have. Maybe they've been overlooked. Maybe they have been in development. Maybe they really have had things that they're struggling with outside of school. But sometimes that one opportunity can spark something that really helps that student to grow and to blossom. So is there a place for a student who might take this opportunity and grow to the next level? So I think those are some things that we really want to leave you thinking about as you start to put new opportunities together. So moving to the next slide, thinking about how to source this information. So these are the questions that you have. How do you get the answers to these questions? So some of the activities, you want to make sure that you are looking to plan and having all of these factors on the left-hand side as part of your thoughts. So the duration and the intensity of the activity, that is definitely going to be important as you start to think about what kinds of skills and experiences a student will need. The sophistication of the tasks to be performed, do they already have that skill set? Is it that they're on the spectrum growth-wise to be able to reach that particular level, or are they already there? The promise of the skills to be honed. You really want to think about, what will a student leave with? Not just the exit ticket or the reflection tool, but what will they be able to add to their employability profile at the end of this particular opportunity? What's the location of the activity? If it is in person, which are few and far between nowadays, but For those that have to travel, what's the requirement based on where the student is based and where they need to get to? Is that even realistic? And then what's the type and amount of support that students will receive? You know, do you have someone at that site who has some youth development exposure, who can actually work with a student when they may fall down or make mistakes? Or is the expectation that the student coming on board needs to be ready to go, kind of needing to hit the ground running? Is that something that's flexible? Have you had that relationship where you can work that out with your employer partner? You know, what are the qualifications that the employer has asked for specifically? Do they want an older student? Do they want someone who has had internship exposure before? Those are the types of things you also want to think about when you're matching. And then finally, supervisor personality and appetite or ability to mentor. So as I mentioned before, not all students come ready to go. There are those that need that, you know, hand-holding, need that additional mentorship. Do you have someone who is willing to and able to do that? So I think those definitely kind of make opportunities and placements distinctive, and would definitely dictate which students you put where, because the students that probably need a little bit more support would probably be best placed where you have a mentor. And then finally, in the next slide, we want to talk through, you know, the source of information number 2, which is the student. You know, where are you able to collect information from your students while they're at school? So have they told you what their interests are? How are you finding that that information is being collected? Are you doing surveys every semester just to see if interests have changed? What are the reflections that are attached to every opportunity? Are you getting any information from whether it's growth, or, you know, if they maybe didn't like or appreciate that last opportunity? How is that factoring into what you choose to keep and what you choose to sunset? What are past activities they've had? You know, they definitely have probably done, you know, something along the lines of summer youth or something like babysitting or tutoring for the most part. And, you know, you want to get a sense from students what they actually appreciate doing before you place them. What about the CTS data? You know, have they done hours? You can definitely run reports to see where students are in their journey to the 54, what their attendance is like. Are they someone who is taking school seriously at this time? Are they someone who might be struggling? Are they actually, you know, spotty when it comes to coming to their classes? You know, those are things that might also determine whether you want to place a student that is expected to be ready to go, or if they really need that handholding. You know, the skills and WBL trajectory, that's also something that's very important. And, you know, you want to make sure that you are tracking that, especially with the employability profile and other documents. Progress reports and academic standing, all of those things make a huge difference. And I think in terms of, you know, how you bring the team on board in this work, you know, talking to content teachers, talking to guidance, other people who may have access to how the student is actually progressing through school is going to be critical, because you do want to make sure you're not taking away from time that they need to be focusing on, you know, subject areas that they might be weaker at. And then also previous work history, you know, have they done other projects? Have they done, you know, workplace challenges? Have they done any other types of stuff outside of school? And then what were their other supervisor evaluations like? If they have done work before, you definitely want to talk to people who have had a chance to oversee their work and get a sense of, you know, what quality they've put into the opportunities that they've had in the past. I would definitely not say you don't want to give a student an opportunity if they messed it up the first time. I think sometimes students just need another chance. But if there has been a trend there, you might want to tread a little bit lightly around how you kind of ramp up the WBL opportunities that they get. And as I mentioned, you want to make this a team effort. So involving other staff on the school level is going to be really important, as well as family and parents. I think we often overlook, you know, this particular stakeholder. They are with the student more often than any of us, and can definitely give you insight as to how that student is performing and what that student wants to do, and give you sometimes the green light for that student to participate. So I think it's important to keep all of those folks in mind. And again, this is just a framework that was put together to help you to really think deeply about how you're evaluating students for each of their opportunities. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague Desmond to think more deeply about how that process could work for different WBL activities.
Thank you so much, Takia. Appreciate that. So what we wanted to kind of discuss, or actually ask you guys, this is not me, I'm just facilitating this part of the conversation, is actually, to take a deeper look and to actually just help us figure out, like, what is each stakeholder's role in the matching process, right? So sticking to the same scenario, an opportunity of some sort has been announced, and we just want to think about, like, how do we, what is the role? What do people do in the space? So again, we're asking folk to either unmute or drop it in the chat as we kind of go through this. So next slide, please. The first stakeholder that we want to address is the coordinator. So just top of mind, top 3 things that we think are the coordinator's responsibility in the matching process. I mean, I know what I think, but anyone want to throw it out there? Any brave soul? I know you guys know because this is your work. So again, for you, like, what are the top 3 things that you think about in the matching process from the coordinator role? Anyone? All right, fine, I'll start it off. To actually identify these opportunities, right? I feel like a lot of times it falls on the coordinator to be the one to see that this opportunity arose somewhere and to actually, like, start to make the moves to continue to find more opportunities for students. So I gave you the first one. Anyone else?
Well, I was about to jump in, Desmond, when you started. But I was gonna say, I mean, for me, I only teach seniors. So when I'm looking for students, I really rely on the other teachers to help me. So it's me seeking input from the other teachers in the CTE department who can point me in the direction of students who have either shown an interest in a specific area or a lot of maturity or whatever it is that we're looking for, because I don't necessarily know them until they cross my threshold. And by then, they may have missed other things. So I really do. I spend a lot of time talking to the teachers about who those other kids are that we could, open up opportunities to.
Fantastic. That's a great point. So your primary role is to be a seeker, right? Is to find the kids, find the opportunities, and find the information. I love it. Anyone else want to add to the coordinator's specific roles in the matching process? I mean, we know we got a lot.
Hi, it's Asia. I know we do a lot at the school that I'm at in terms of just where they are academically, where they are socially. A lot of thought is given even before these opportunities are even offered. Like, there's a pretty, I guess I would say, in-depth scanning of, like, who would even qualify, who's a good candidate for these opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So, okay, great. So again, let's going into the assessment, right? So kind of leading that process and really being involved in understanding the value of assessment. I think that's kind of, for me, the key takeaway that I'm hearing from this one. Next participant or stakeholder would actually be the CTE teacher, apart from the coordinator, right? So thinking that some of us here do both, like, what in the role of CTE teacher becomes, I guess the question of, like, the key responsibility in that role. I think, Emily, you kind of stated it before, right? Like, on the other side of your question, being the content expert in terms of knowing the students, yeah?
Right.
But
I think it's observing the students and, zeroing in on their, sometimes it's like an offhanded comment that a kid says in a class, but if the right person hears it and the right person shares it with me or with someone else, like, that can sometimes open something up to, an opportunity for a student. I don't know if this is going to be another one of your stakeholders coming up, but I have a lot of the same conversations with my guidance counselors. They do a lot of the same things for me, talking to students about their interests and stuff like that and sharing that with me.
Copy. Yeah, you kind of stole like a few ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know if it was coming around in a circle later, but just in case.
It's all part of the family, so it works. Don't worry about it. We're gonna get to it. So next slide, please. The next candidate that we want to talk about is actually the industry partner. So aside from just being industry, like what do we think is really the responsibility or the role of the industry partner in the matching process? I think this to me is one of the more interesting ones. Or let's put it like this, what should it be? Because I know what the industry partners currently do. What do we think would make it like, right? Like what we, and I guess aspirational, what do we really think the industry partners
Outlining the tasks, outlining the job,
Okay.
giving all the parameters of what's required, maybe some requirements that the student should have before they actually get set up for the job. But just making sure, like having a meeting and having the skills that are required for the job, having some of the, like I said before, the prep work that's required, what their expectations are that the students will gain while in the project, and what actually is the project they're going to do, or what is the work assignment that they're going to do, and what we can do as CTE teachers and work-based coordinators to sort of connect the students with that opportunity.
I'm sorry, I want to also throw in there and commit to providing feedback.
Yeah.
For the students that
important.
are, for the students that are interning.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that too and say identify someone who actually can relate to the young person as the person providing feedback. I think oftentimes, people want to get involved, they volunteer, but they may not necessarily have the background or the right, ability to really engage with a young person. So I think to make it meaningful, they need to identify on their end who would be the right person to be the supervisor or the host.
Absolutely. I think creating the right set of conditions is cute. Somebody, I'm sorry, that didn't come.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to get in there. Ideally, I think an industry partner, and this is based on my experience, needs to be somebody that's vested, not just looking for free help. All right. Somebody that really, cares about the community. Luckily for me, I have a lot of graduates who have gone out on their own and opened their own salons. So they like to give back because they had that opportunity, but that's only for cosmetology. I'm having a hard time with some other places. And thank God for people like Adele who helped me find sites and stuff like that. Otherwise, they have to be vested. It's not free help.
So true, so true. I really think, that's such a key thing, right? Like their responsibility is to actually want to be responsible to the kids. I think that's, you said it, so well. It's such a key thing that sometimes we forget, right? Next, let's not forget the actual student. What is the student's responsibility in this matching process? Please give it to me. I know y'all gotta have ideas about this one. Come. So, anyone? No one?
The desire to actually want to do the work, the prep work that they need to do, filling out all the forms, getting parent signatures, making sure they have all the requirements filled out before they actually, like when we as a CTE teacher or work-based learning coordinator gives them the paperwork that they need to do, that they actually fill it out, that they're actually committed to get it done, to, dress properly for the interview, all the things that they need to be prepared properly. So that's on the student as well as everyone else on the team, but they need to be a part of that team. And if they don't know something, like I tell any student, they need to ask, and they need to make sure that if there's something they don't have, what can they do to get it? So I guess the main thing for a student is the commitment, their commitment to want to succeed.
Awesome. I definitely hear that. Anyone else? Student commitment.
I would add work ethic, but which is kind of, playing off of what Bruce said. I mean, I've had extremes. I've had students that don't have social security numbers, and they would just like, give me all the experiences you can give me. I want to learn this, even though they're not getting paid. And then on the other hand, I got students that think because they have a name that they are entitled to a paycheck. So I have the extremes. Okay. And stuff like that. And the thing is, you can't teach somebody work ethic. So this all ties. All right, Desmond, I'm probably going to blow your ending here, but this all ties together because the teachers turn around and the teachers will tell me, all right, this kid's ready. I've been working with them and stuff like that. So that's kind of like what Emily's doing. And they'll tell me, and then I'll hook up that kid, the best I can. And then everybody knows at my school, if you want a job, you go see Koch. And I'm looking and I'm like, but you don't even come to school. How can I get you a job if your attendance is less than 20%? So, I don't want to discourage somebody, but If you can't do school, how are you going to do work?
Great point. So the student's primary responsibility as a stakeholder in this process is to be a student, right? Is to be engaged, but to show up, period. I
Right.
think that's a great point, because, you know, we can't give them an opportunity if they can't show up for it.
But you know, Desmond, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I also think that they need to have there should be a willingness to learn, right?
I love that.
A lot of times when you get into a space, and maybe we should be talking to them about that, is that this is not now some of the internships may be glamorous, but you're there to actually learn. I was speaking with Takia last week, and she made a great point in talking about the importance of these opportunities in the internships, is that this is an entry point into the work environment. So along with the task, you're also supposed to be observing what it's like to actually work in these environments, and who better to study than the people who are in that space. But before you do that, I mean, these are the conversations that we should be having with young people, is to say, hey, listen, this is not just a task-oriented internship. You're also there to observe and to learn and to see what it's like to be in the workforce.
I agree with what Larry says, and I do something like that with all of my experiences. My students all have to keep a journal, and the
Nice.
journal everything from the I-9 verification, from the interview, they have to keep everything. And I'm not talking Dear Diary. I'm talking 3 or 4 sentences. What did you observe? What did you learn that we haven't taught you at school? Because then that comes back as a reflective piece for me. And what are you using from school on the job? So, and that is a requirement. I don't release funds until I have a well-written journal.
Nice. Okay, so
Nice.
that comes back to the other piece, which is that one of the responsibilities is to actually hold these kids' expectations. I love it. Next slide, because I think y'all got that one. Parents, as we kind of brought in earlier, right? Parents can become the gatekeepers, or they can become the door slammers. But aside from that part, like what do we think are some of the other key responsibilities, or some of the major asks that we would like to have, you know, from the parent side?
That they're on board, that they're going to allow the students to get to the place of work, that, you know, it's going to be within their means, that they don't have other obligations that are going to impede, or the parents are aware of what the students' obligations are, making sure they fill out all the forms that are necessary. All that stuff is important, because a lot of times when a student will come in, they want to do it, but then they say, oh, my parents need me to babysit, or they need me to do this, or, you know, there becomes a conflict. So I think having the parents on board and being made aware of when the time frame of the work experience is going to take place is really important.
I love it. I love it. I kind of have a weird thing as well, right? Like almost, I love the parents to be involved, but I also need them to fall all the way back in that. And no, it's weird, right? Because it's like, I guess the other part of it is I don't want the helicopter parent. I don't need the parent that gets all the documents for me, that makes all the kids' appointments for me, that emails. Like, I need a parent to understand to that process that the student needs to be involved in the learning of it. And I need a parent to partner to get the student to that place versus to do it for them, because
Right.
you may spend their paycheck, but you can't walk that, you know, that mile for them every time. So,
You know, Desmond,
no.
I want to be your partner, right? As a parent. No, for real. I want to be I want to be your partner. I just don't want to be the last one invited to a party, right? So I would like it for you, if you're the coordinator, I mean, I don't only want to hear from you when something's wrong, like introduce yourself. You know what I mean? Like give me that early introduction of who you are, what your role is, and what your relationship is like with my child, so that I know, not the intimate. I'm just saying, like, hey, look, I'm a WBL coordinator. I'm tasked with, you know, providing WBL activities, blah, 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 blah. But when you're communicating with them that way, to where it's like, when it's come times for an internship, nothing is a surprise.
Right.
Or even if you're sending out a form, because you hear that a lot, well, I have to babysit and stuff like that. Put down some of the excuses in a letter to say, hey, are any of these things going to be a hindrance to your child participating in activities or an internship? You know, communicating it that way, and see what type of feedback or response you get.
No, I hear that. That's super key. I think, you know, the parent is a great fact checker in so many things, right? In terms of what the student wants to be true and what's actually true. And so that getting that accurate information from the parent becomes so key. You ain't never lie about that.
Can I
Yes,
just add something real quick there? Also, I think the parent needs to know what kinds of skills the student will be learning and how this might open doors for them. I think there's some parents who don't even know that their child is in a CTE program. They don't know
Yes.
what that means. They don't know what the industry partner's role could be, and how that could really lend the student, a more a bigger exposure to that industry. So I think it's important too to just explain to the parent, like, this is what they could be missing out on if they don't do this activity. You know what I mean? So it makes it more real to them in terms of their future.
Love it.
And this should be something that should be introduced in like the 9th grade when they're first looking at programs, not when they're already in it, but even when they're even deciding on it. Like, it should be part of the conversations of, let's say, an orientation, or when they first get accepted into the program, what are the requirements? What are going to be the requirements and the stages that the student will be going through, and all the skills that they'll be learning all the way through. And, what obligations the parent is going to have as well as the student, towards that program.
What I've always done pre-pandemic days is students would all give me their applications. I'm just talking internships. And that's, I always, did seniors first, then juniors. But in the fall, I get applications in September, and I check them out with guidance, make sure everybody's on track for graduation first. And I had a mandatory parents meeting where the parents had to come to school. And you are not doing an internship unless, and boy, I'll tell you something, that we had a better turnout for these meetings than we do for parent teacher conferences. Okay. Because, and all questions and everything you guys talked about, the skills, something to write on your resume, and of course the money. I was lucky. I never had helicopter parents, except if a kid didn't submit their timesheet on time and the parent calls me, "Where's my kid's money?" Okay, that's the only real time that I had any interactions with parents, but I made it mandatory. And I'll tell you something, parents who had never set foot in that building in 3 or 4 years were there because their kid pushed them because they wanted the job.
I love it. I love it. All right, yeah. Just so we don't run out of time, I just want to keep moving through, because this is going to be this is a great conversation. Next, guidance counselors. I know you mentioned it a little bit before, but what? So not just like what do we need from them, but also in this exchange, like what might the guidance counselors need from us in order to actually better help us in this process?
I'm going to comment on that just because I'm not always sure the guidance counselors really understand how much of a commitment and how much really goes along with these programs and their grades and their responsibilities. So sometimes I feel like the guidance counselors don't have as big of a buy-in to the program because it's not like English, it's not a Regents that they could have.
Oh, that's very true. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, so, but also within the space, so like, what if the guidance counselor is on your team, right? Is on your side? Like, what benefit do they bring to this process if they actually like understand?
So it's huge because they could talk to the kids, and when the kids maybe are feeling a little discouraged or feel like they're struggling and this is just an elective, why keep going? They could really open the door to all the comments that everyone on the group made in terms of, well, look what this looks like on your resume, and this is a stepping stone to maybe even a bigger career.
And also with scheduling, they could help out with scheduling to make sure that the student is available in the afternoons, or work out their schedule so that it helps the student rather than hinders it. If they're part of, like you said, the main thing is getting them part of the team, making sure that they come to meetings, or making sure that you reach out as a coordinator and as a CTE instructor to the guidance department and really explain what it is you want from them.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Larry, can we skip to the next, not 18 to 19?
I add something?
Please, please do.
Just really quick, shout out to guidance counselors. A guidance counselor for me that connected me to a work-based learning opportunity and informed my mother about it, because I was at the point of graduation far before the school would release me to graduate. So I think a guidance counselor who has, as they all do, connections to the students can actually be a catalyst to let you know about a student that may be slipping through the cracks. So you never know, through those conversations with them, they'll have someone who's primed and ready for an opportunity, but maybe too shy to say something.
Absolutely true.
Can I?
And I'd say that the guidance counselor also like sort of sees the bigger, like they know what's going on for the student academically, they know what's going on for the student at home, they know what's going on for the student maybe social emotionally. So they have a little bit more of the constellation pieces than perhaps some of the other figures at the school would.
Agreed.
I will say this, and I don't want to take up too much time on that part. It's funny because Aja, something I was listening to what you said and the way that everyone has been describing the role of a guidance counselor. Sometimes I'm wondering what type of guidance counselor exists at your school. Is it the one that's solely focused on the academic piece, or is it one that's focused on, Joe, like Joe mentioned, the socio-emotional piece? Because there are some guidance counselor who is strictly about it's strictly about that academia piece, right? And they don't really know much about what's going on with in students' personal lives. You usually have to depend on some of the other roles that we're listing here to find out that information. So I think that's a great assessment, Aja, just in terms of them not understanding like how important the program is. But I would want to ask, like, well, what type of guidance counselor do you have? And you said to skip, right?
No, I think that the guy.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
please.
Asha, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Please.
No, I think that for sure. And that's the reason I had brought up how important the program is. Maybe if it came from them, because they're good relationship. A lot of times, what they say sometimes has a bigger effect.
Right. Sometimes the guidance counselor is almost like the cool aunt or uncle kind
Right.
of thing. Right. So I'm continuing. I'm sorry. You're fading in and out.
Going in and out.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll just wait for it to, I guess, come back in. But Larry, can we jump to the next one? Because I know we've talked a lot about teachers.
Yep.
And I guess the question I wanted to get to admin, right? It's like principal, AP, administrators, like what role do they have in the matching process? Or what role should they have?
I can speak at my school. You know, it's funny because I just reread the initial question. The matching process, that is honestly, as the work-based learning coordinator, that's 100% on me. As far as everybody else, in all these other bubbles, you know, it's, do they have the skills? Are they coming to school? Are they a discipline issue? And I'll admit it freely that if I have a kid in an internship and they start screwing up at school, everybody knows that and everybody's on that kid. Okay, why aren't you, now you're coming in late? Maybe we should hold off and suspend the internship until you get back on track. But as far as matching a kid, that's all me. I mean, I've had cos kids that after 4 years turn around, they're like, you know what, Ms. Koch, I want an internship, but I've learned I don't want cosmetology. I might want to be a social worker. So I'll find something else so that they can explore that career while still in high school. That's the matching is all me. It's everybody else is, you know, helping to get the kids on board, reviewing their skills, changing programs if need to be to get them out. All that's everybody else.
Got it. It's like you guys are in my notes. So speaking about everybody else, I guess my next question became, who's responsible for looking out for like L's and IEP students and other populations and helping you get them into the matching process? Like that always became a question in terms of, for me, like, I know what I saw in the student, but then also, you know, when we start to really considering students with alternate needs, alternate skills, and just all of these different variables at play, I knew I wasn't equipped to make those decisions. So in this pantheon, who do we, I guess?
Well, that's where the APs, the SPED teachers, the social workers, you know, all the auxiliary people that are there, the speech therapists that might come in, you know, any one of those people could be part of your team, and you need to reach out. But the first people I would go to were the SPED teachers and maybe the APs, because they would have a good handle on that, and the guidance counselors, and then have them come and tell you, well, you know what, they're you know, at this and this time they're seeing the social worker, at this and this time they might be seeing the speech therapist or the occupational therapist or whoever they're talking to, and getting feedback from everyone on the team. And that's where, you know, that was where I would go to find out, you know, and go to maybe some of the IEP meetings and sit in on them as a content teacher. That was another way I got to get some kids involved.
Okay. So it becomes almost more like a not commutative, like you kind of give and take, right? So you join the IEP meetings to provide,
right?
You can also get something back.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Next slide.
Zaylene also shared that transition coordinators should also be available with the history of the student. I don't know if she wants to unmute.
Yeah, please tell us more about a transition coordinator. I haven't.
Oh yes. For all students with the IEP, there's a transition history. Well, sort of a transition coordinator that builds a history of CTE, work study, or aspirations the students have post-secondary. And that's included throughout all of their intervals of certification and IEP meetings. And that's a great resource to get a sort of eye into what the student is interested in, how they've grown, and maybe their needs when thinking about opportunities in the work-based learning community. That person exists and they're there at the IEP meetings and contributing to the plan and so forth.
That is awesome. Thank you for bringing that back to light. And I'm sorry, just anything else?
No, thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And the last in this group is previous partners or other folk who know the students. What can they offer us in this space? All right, I'll say it. Historical data. That's kind of what we're looking at, right? We just wanted somebody who might, again, just know the student in a way that we may not, or just, I think to the point that we made previously, has just had an experience and had a key piece of, you know, knowledge or data point that we may not have previously thought to look for. So thanks again, you know, thank you guys again for just kind of filling this space with your responses. And I'd like to now pass it on to my good friend, Joe, to continue sharing with us.
Thanks, Desmond. We're going to talk a little bit about approaches to parents in the matching process. We already had a really rich conversation about this, so I don't want to put too fine a line on it. Takia mentioned, you know, there are some parents who don't even know that their child is in the CTE program. Larry, from the perspective of a parent, said, I don't want to hear from you only when something is wrong, right? All of this says that parents deserve, should have more than minimal involvement. And this is beneficial for the parent, and it's beneficial for the school and for the student as well. Often it becomes very easy to kind of give the parent minimal involvement because, you know, the basic unit of the work-based learning experience is the student, the site, the school. Like that triangle's the nucleus of the experience. It doesn't always feel as though parents are an integral part of that nucleus. They actually really are, for all of the reasons that we've discussed, right? Bruce said it's important that they're on board. Desmond said it's important that they know when to step forward and when to step back, right? There are going to be moments to step forward and moments to step back. So this part of the presentation is really just about thinking about, you know, and many of you, most of you, if not all of you, already have all of these ideas in the hopper. They're already going on in your programs. We just wanted to quickly review some ways of engaging parents in this process. If we could have the next slide. So we were thinking about, you know, sort of before work-based learning, before it actually happens, right? By the time the work-based learning is happening, we've already heard that's a little too late in the sense that, you know, there are ways the parent needs to contribute and participate that precede the moment where the opportunity actually begins. So it's important to be sort of proactive and planful and think about having the parents involved, not just when the opportunity is at our doorstep, but prior to that. Somebody had already talked about information sessions and open houses. These can be specific to opportunities. You know, we're going to gather together to talk about this particular work-based learning opportunity, or it can just be about the year ahead or the semester ahead in work-based learning. Here are the opportunities coming up. We want you as parents to know first. We want you to be in the know. We want you to have a sneak preview of what's coming up this semester, so you can think about what kinds of things you think your child can be involved in. Celebrations too. It's really important not just to kind of say, we need this from you. We need to make sure that, you know, you're okay with helping the student make this commitment and stick with this commitment. There's also, this is what your child did in their last work-based learning experience, and this is why it was wonderful, and we want you to be a part of that. Parent-teacher conferences and open school nights. Somebody mentioned that there were separate events held that got higher participation than parent-teacher conferences. But when there are you know, events at school that are ostensibly more for the teachers to meet with the parents to talk about how the students are doing, become a part of that. You know, make a work-based learning and CTE check-in a part of the parent-teacher conference experience. Like, yes, you're hearing about how your students are doing in classes, but also we want to tell you how they're doing in CTE classes, how they're doing in their work-based learning as well. And home contact as well, you know, which it sounds like a lot of you are already making pretty organically, intuitively on your own. Also leaning on colleagues that you have that have those great relationships, teachers who have good home relationships, parent coordinators, folks who are already you know, very much in the space of relationship building with parents. And then during work-based learning, you know, these are all of the things that have come up already, not just about kind of supporting the support gathering documents and completing paperwork, and in talking to the parents about the skills that are going to be involved, both the skills that the young person already has and the ones that they're going to be developing. I see we're losing some folks to a next meeting. Thank you for joining us, Emily. And also providing updates from the work-based learning site and celebrating milestones, not just after the work-based learning activity has ended, but in the course of the work-based, if it's an internship, if it's a sort of a longer experience, what are the benchmarks? What are the students, you know, what are the key notes that the student is hitting throughout the experience? And how can the parents and the family be engaged? You know, when the student is doing well, and also maybe when they need a little bit of an extra boost, they're having a hard time in their work-based learning experience. And we all need to kind of huddle together as a team, the school, the partner, the home, to figure out what to do about that and how to be as helpful as kind of a village as we can toward the student. So that's just basically kind of a bit of a run through about some pretty basic, you know, fundamental knowledge that we all already have, but it's always important and helpful to kind of keep this front of mind and use it as we go forward in the matching process. And with that, I believe, do we have Bruce coming up next?
Yes, we do.
Yes, sorry. Okay, so communicating with students in and out of the building, right? So, you know, during your lunch period, your free periods, it's a really good opportunity to meet with students and communicate with them, find out, like I used to do this, find out what their goals are, what they're looking for before and after school. You know, when there's free time, meet them at clubs or extracurricular activities. Because during the class time, it's really hard to get a one-on-one with a student. But during your free times, and this is up to you as a coordinator, as a CTE teacher, it's a really, really good opportunity to meet with students, to find out, as I said, their specific goals, needs, desires, wants. I found this to be extremely, extremely helpful. And students are much more willing to open up to you when it's more on a one-on-one or a specific info session. Another thing, the home contact, as we all said, is really important. That home contact and reaching out to the students, reaching out to the families can really help you get the students on board and get the parents on board and get all the things that are needed. Case conferences with teachers, once again, as we talked about before, having, you know, one-on-one conferences with students, getting involved and finding out from other teachers. And like I talked about, you know, the SPED teachers, some of the other auxiliary helpers in the school that can work with the student, work with you, and maybe make the connections. Maybe you don't have a connection with the student, but somebody else does, and then you can be introduced to that student. It's all about outreach. We have to make that extra step to reach out to the students. And sometimes the students that are really not on board at first, but, you know, some teacher, some assistant has the ability to reach out to that student. They can connect with you, but you have to be there also. And then, specific, make some time even, on the side of the class, ask the student to stay, a couple of minutes extra or at the end of a day. Of course, with teachers' consent and participation. But sometimes, a student wants to reach out to you, making that time can make all the difference in the world of a student that might have been sort of hesitant in participating. They feel your desire to help them, and they might want to reach out when they couldn't before. So communication with students is the utmost. If you have that connection with a student, more likely than not, you will get them into a program. You will get them to want to do an internship, and the preparation piece will become a lot better for you and the student. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And, we want to just kind of start wrapping up. We only have 5 minutes, but, we want to just remind you guys that coaching is still available. We know that for some of you, you have individual needs right now in terms of support for work-based learning, building capacity, thinking through and ideating around workplace challenges. All of that would be available to you if you come on Wednesdays at 4. So after every institute session in the 3 weeks that follow is coaching for an hour. We try to divvy up folks if there's a bigger group, but if it's a smaller group, we work together and kind of, try to solve any problems you might be, having at the moment. So if you would want to sign up, definitely through the exit ticket, we can contact you and give you the information around that. And then, in terms of the next WBL Institute on February 8th, the topic is readiness to launch. We're really thinking about the sites, the hosts, and the folks that are on the work site part of this equation, and making sure that there's a preparatory process to be able to get the right match from the employer end. So I think that's going to be really key. And then finally, we have a huge opportunity coming up that we want to hear more about from the Grant Associates team. So I'm going to turn it over to Adele Harity to share a couple of slides that talk through what they want us to know. And I don't know, Larry, I don't know if you can give Adele the ability to share her screen, but the Grants team is in the house and has some slides to share.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Thanks, great presentation so far. So my name is Adele Harity. I work for Grant Associates. There's also Infinity and Renewmar, also program coordinators on the call. I do have a presentation, but I don't know if who's sharing now wants to stop sharing, so then I can, perfect. But made by the lovely Infinity. She is so talented at PowerPoints. So we can go through this. I know all of you have, if you're work-based learning coordinators, have definitely received updates from us just on the programming we have going on for this spring. So who are we? Oops, we're here to support with work-based learning. I skipped through the slide, I guess. Let me go back so you can see our lovely faces. Chandra's also on this call, Matt, myself, Renewman Infinity. So we just want to help students get those work-based learning hours and gain some job experience affiliated with what they're learning in the classroom. So the first opportunity we have coming up is going to be this ISP prep program targeted to juniors. They'll be paid. And I know earlier we were talking about how students with no social security numbers are really eager to gain experiences. So this is a great opportunity for those students. If they don't have a social security number and can't get I-9 verified, they could participate in our prep program. Since it's stipend, there's no verification process necessary. This will be 4 weeks, all virtual. The students will attend 3 different workshops throughout the week, each industry. And then on Fridays, we'll do like a resume workshop. The application is the same to the internship application in the CTE tracking website. Juniors are our main priority for this opportunity. So then they can be prepared to then hopefully do an ISP internship in the next year when they're seniors. So these will there'll be different workshops by different employer partners that we have coming on, presenting. Each week's a different theme. It's going to be really fun. We first launched this last year, and so we've kind of redone it a little for this coming spring, but we're really excited about the opportunity to give to students, 20 hours paid starting January 31st. And then it will conclude February 18th or 25th. And then to ISP Spring, which is our internship program. This will be 6 weeks. So the students apply similar in CTS. The application deadline for this is January 21st. And Damiano, I know you're on this call, but I also can drop in the chat the video on how students can apply for the internship in CTE. And so that the internships will begin in March for the spring. And we're kind of tackling right now virtual, more likely than not will be virtual. And they'll be paid $15 an hour for a total of 60 hours. Students for this opportunity do need to get I-9 verified. And for this year, we are prioritizing students cannot interview until they've been I-9 verified. And so we have a bunch of different, we have a Calendly link. We're doing verifications Monday and Thursday from 3 to 5, courtesy of thank you, Desmond, and all of the Sims team for attending those. So all of this, a lot of information. You will see our contact information here. So if your school has an auto and transportation, business and finance, or hospitality and tourism CTE track, you'll be hearing from Matt Brito. Renuma oversees construction and engineering. She's also on this call. You'll hear from her. Infinity's IT and healthcare. And then I oversee media and culinary. So this is us, this is our faces. I know it was a lot, I tried to talk really quickly. So thank you so much again. These are our opportunities. I'd love to chat more about them. If you have time, I'll drop my email in the chat. And I look forward to seeing an abundance of applicants from your school.
Thank you so much, Adele. And, you know, we know we've been advertising these opportunities in the WBL newsletter. You will be continuing to see this, so this will not be the last time you hear about them or from them, but just want to make sure that people know that your students will start to need to be prepared very, very soon, next week, actually. So I will hand everything back over to my colleague, Larry, to take us home because we're out of time. But definitely appreciate that you guys were able to come, Grant's team, and we thank you for all of the important information. So Larry, take it away.
Thanks, Takia. So as always, our WBL Institute calendar, we're sharing with you the link of all the rest of the offerings that we have for spring 2022. We're also going to be sharing the link to the sessions folder where we'll have this presentation. And as always, I think Takia shared it twice. The exit ticket, please, please, please fill out those exit tickets. And with that, we thank you for attending this afternoon. From myself, Takia, Desmond, from Bruce, from Joe. We thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at coaching, and we look forward to seeing you next month at our next presentation. So have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Stay warm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.